Hey everybody, I hope and pray that you're doing well. Today as we come to our word from the Word. And today that word is pure. Pure. Now, throughout the law as it's been given, as we've seen already in Leviticus especially, we see all the sacrifices that have to be made for different things. Here in in Numbers 19, you also see rules and laws around purification. Now, why I mentioned at this time, especially as it's dealing with anybody that's touched a corpse or been around death and had anything to do with it. Well, remember the things that we've been talking about in recent chapters. If, about 15,000 people were killed in that rebellion of Korah and his people, then it makes sense that now there would be a reminder of what needs to take place. So you'll see in Numbers 19 that they take a red heifer, and that's the one that is to be sacrificed. It's the only time we ever see that a color associated with it, and maybe there's some reasoning there relating to sin. We see, though our sin be as scarlet, it could be made as white as snow, and maybe because it is a sin offering, and this particular one, maybe so. Maybe not. Maybe God was just being specific for a reason that we don't know, or I won't say for no specific reason because he always has a reason. And the fact that it was, a lot of commentators tell you that because it was a female, because she's the one that gives life, and all of this is dealing with what happens when life is snuffed out, when life is over, and why it would have been a heifer instead of a bull. And even as you go along with this and you read it, you'll see that, even if you've been in the same tent of someone that was dead, if you've touched even a bone, right? And there's several things, and it says, hey, you're going to go through this process. Now, the process is to make you pure, right? To be purified. That's what it is, to kind of to make new, to restore you back to the way that you're supposed to be. Because everything that we touch spiritually makes us unclean. Everything is sinful. Let me make sure I clarify that. Every time we get off of what God would have us to do, we are facing impurity. Along with that, you say, well, wait a minute, death is part of life, and sometimes you can't help it. If they were in battle and somebody was killed by the sword, or even an accident, something happened, or just for health reasons or old age, there's people there, and why would that make them impure? Why would it make them where they needed to be purified? Why would they be called unclean? Well, we have to remember, where does death come from? Death originated because of sin. So every death, no matter how timely or untimely, every death is associated with original sin. It doesn't mean that somebody was killed specifically for some particular sin that they did. Now, sometimes we see that does happen with Aaron's sons, and so we're going to talk about this Wednesday night, right? It happened with Ananias and Sapphira in Acts. But here's the thing. In general, death comes because of original sin in the garden. The wages of sin is death. So, especially in the old covenant, right? They needed this daily reminder, and this reminder that every time they dealt with death, that they needed to be made pure. Now, just two verses I want to look at today, and we'll point out something else about this purity. And it says in verse 9 and 10, says, then a man who is clean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer and store them outside the camp in a clean place, and they shall be kept for the congregation of the children of Israel for the water of purification. It is for purifying from sin. And the one who gathers the ashes of the heifer shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. It shall be a statute forever to the children of Israel and to the stranger who dwells among them. Well, see, here's the funny thing. The heifer was burned outside of camp because it was related to sin. The ashes were gathered up and put in a place that was clean, and they were stored to be later added to water to make the people pure. Now, ashes typically are what we would think, that's what would make you unclean. But yet God says, no, the ashes will be added to the water to make you clean. See, that alone ought to show us that God is sovereign in everything that he does. And just because something doesn't make sense to us doesn't mean that it's not God's will and God's way. It's many times in life that we question the things that God is doing and why he wants things a certain way. At the end of the day, man, we're talking about this in Sunday school. The Lord's just tying all these things together. God is holy. He is set apart. We are not like him. His ways are not our ways, and our ways and thoughts are not the same as his. And so we must understand that everything that he is doing is to make us more like Christ, to make us look more like Jesus, to get rid of and to knock off all of the things that don't look like Jesus. And at times he has to take ashes and in that same kind of metaphorical sense that he takes those ashes and adds them to water and things that we wouldn't think would be good for us and things that we think that even if we had to drink it, it would be bitter. And we think that the thing that would not be something that would clean me on the outside, but yet God says that it does. And so we have to remember as we're going through this, and as you look back through all of Leviticus and the ceremonial clean and unclean and morally clean and unclean and everything related to sin makes us unclean. That's why it's also such a beautiful and wonderful display of love that God had for us, that he would choose to do all of these things to his son Jesus. That Jesus would willingly lay down his life to take on our sin, to be that sacrifice in our place, so we wouldn't have to keep offering up animals, because remember, the blood of bulls and goats, right? It was never going to wash away sin. It's only the blood of the true Lamb, Jesus Christ, that could do that. So today you say, well, how do I take all this and apply it to my life? Well, simply here's what I would encourage you with. Realize the holiness of God. And then once you have done that, you will recognize that everything that's not pleasing to him should make us feel unclean. But the best part is we don't have to go through a ritual like they did under the law. We come back to God in prayer. We come confessing our sins, repenting of our sins, right? Turning away from them, not saying I'm sorry just to turn around and do the same thing again tomorrow. But we also have to understand that God is trying to make us pure. Why? Well, why else would he have said, be ye holy, for I am holy? God's not going to ask us to do something that he doesn't desire for us first. God bless you, and I pray you have a great, great day.